Hi, I'm Jesse and Kate with Canine Perspective, and in this video we're going to cover is in-person training or a board and train right for me, okay? So this is what the consultation is for, but if you're still kind of like, do I need to book you have to book a consultation, that has to happen, that's mandatory, because I do have to evaluate the case and all that stuff. But when clients are unsure whether or not their dog is eligible to be trained by a board and train or a daycare and train, simply comes down to what it is that we're trying to address. Obedience cases, the answer is yes. You have both as an option, both in person and board and train. It simply comes down to your preference because all we care about is obedience. Okay. If we're dealing with any kind of reactivity, like prey-based reactivity or dog-based reactivity, even human-based reactivity, where there's no aggression, but the dog is just kind of nervous and maybe barks a bit at people. We can train with a board and train or daycare and train. Or even dog aggression, technically speaking, we can cover with a board and train as well, because we're not worried about the dog having issues with the humans. Okay. What we don't do is human aggression for a board and train. That is always going to be an in-person by my recommendation, because a lot of times we don't see issues here. That's a big part of it. We've had clients that have dogs that resource guard, that are reactive both towards dogs and humans, even dogs that are exhibiting signs of aggression and stuff like that. And we don't see that here, because the moment the dog comes in, it's boot camp. It's work, it's consequence, it's discipline, it's structure. So we don't see those behaviors because the dog just gets hit with rules and the brain never thinks to challenge the rules. So then they don't exhibit the behaviors. Whereas when the dog is at home, because the owner cuddles them, they're affectionate, they give them treats, they let them do whatever they want. The dog starts to learn that and goes like, okay, well, if you're not going to be in charge of me, then I'll be in charge of myself. Okay. So then a lot of times we don't see those behaviors here. But when it comes to, if I were to deem a case truly human aggressive, or even if it's human reactive, I almost always will kind of lean towards just, you want to do it yourself, simply because you're the one that has to live with the dog. And because the aggression is towards humans, it requires a lot more prerequisite work. Like the dog would have to be muzzle conditioned prior to coming here. They would have to arrive muzzled. They would have to be kept muzzled until we feel we're far enough along that we can trust them to not act out, which may or may not happen within a 2 to 4 week board and train. Obviously there's going to be some conflict there because we're putting pressure on the dog for the obedience stuff, as well as pushing behavior. So it can look uglier than it really is, but it's just the dog being under a lot of stress because they're out of their element, being handled by humans, which they're typically aggressive towards. Okay. So my recommendation, just as a kind of general rule of thumb, is if it's just obedience, in-person and or dog training, in-person and or board and train, daycare and train, no problem. If we have dog reactivity, dog aggression, in-person is always recommended. Board and train, daycare and train, not a problem. But again, we already know how to handle these kinds of dogs, so it's not really a challenge for us, and we may not even see it. We can't always guarantee we can create the problem to record and film to send to the owner so that they can go like, okay, this is how we fix it. Generally, reactivity is covered in the follow-up, because we most likely don't see it here. So then the owner go, okay, I got my dog back. Obedience, great, but they're still reactive with me. And I go, now you have a follow-up, because we couldn't replicate the issue in order to film it and then give it to the owner as a frame of reference. So in person, recommended. Board and train, daycare and train, technically speaking, still an option. Human aggression, in person. Okay, just to keep things simple. Obedience, in person, board and train, daycare and train. Reactivity or dog reactivity, in person recommended. Board and train, daycare and train, absolutely possible. Human aggression, I recommend you do it yourself. Okay. In some rare instances, I will take, like I have a dog coming in a couple of weeks who's human reactive, and when I evaluated her, I'm like, this dog's not aggressive. So I don't foresee an issue here, and it just happens to be convenient for the owner to do a board and train because she wants to travel, and she's not been able to travel in a couple of years because no one will take her dog. So that's the answer for whether or not in-person or board and train is right for you. And I'm Jesse with Canine Perspective. Thank you for watching.